if you are indebted with these loans, if you are using this money for some kind of self-developmental needs or for establishing a family, then it will endow you with moral immunity.
Hello, welcome to our Common Concern podcast. I'm Xiang Biao, a co-director of the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology in Halle, Saale, Germany. This podcast is part of our effort to develop the Common Concerns approach. Common Concerns approach means a type of research that does not only speak about our interlocutors, but more importantly, try to speak to them. At the end of the research, we may go back, we will go back to our interlocutors, tell them what, through our analysis research, we found, and what kind of concepts we developed, what kind of perspectives we propose, and also what kind of new questions we raise. And our interlocutors listen to us and say, yes, these are some issues that have bothered me for a long time, but I have not got time, energy, or words to express them. And these concepts help me to look at my life in a different way and hopefully a clearer way. And therefore, I'm thinking perhaps I can do something about my life in the current circumstances, even though I cannot change the circumstances itself. We proposed this common concerns approach because we realized that the context in which we are doing social research now is very different from what was like even 20 years ago. The massification of higher education worldwide, and especially in the global south, means large number of young people are much better educated than before. They have many questions about their life, and they have lots of opinions want to express. They do not necessarily want experts, researchers come from outside to give them answer or tell them what the truth is really like. Somehow, as if we know their life better than they do. What they need are perhaps concepts or intellectual tools that they can use to think about what they are worried about in their life in their own terms. Therefore, ideally, common concern approach is an exercise that we think together with our interlocutors. And we are still at a very early stage of developing this approach. And in our department, at our weekly meetings, as well as in many other social gatherings, we researchers band our heads together, thinking how we can develop this approach, especially how we can use the materials that we have collected, the field work we have conducted, and now whether we can reconceptualize the data through this approach in order to see something that is already there, but we did not see before. And today I'm very happy to have my colleague, Ferda, join me to discuss about the common concern approach, especially from your own field research, which I understand was almost completed and certainly was started many years ago without necessarily the common concern approach in mind. So that will be kind of experiment to think, okay, does this approach help you to reconceptualize the data, or actually you feel there is some gap that cannot be bridged? Yeah. Ferda, welcome. And could you please tell me what your research is about?
First of all, thanks for having me here today. My doctoral dissertation, and I'm still working on it. I am in the process of turning it into a book. It was about overgrowing problem of indebtedness among the coal miners in Soma, a continuously expanding lignite coal basin in Western Turkey. Actually, this area the Western Turkey, especially the shores of the Aegean Sea, it's traditionally known as a fertile land. So Soma, for years, for decades, it was known as a prosperous agricultural town, but things started to change when the mining industry started to grow.
When was that?
Since the 2000s.
Oh, so recent.
So recent.
Oh.
The state has some infrastructure about coal extraction there and a small power plant, but then things started to change in 2000s because the scale of extraction began to expand in an unforeseen speed. And it is now a mining town full of indebted mine workers. And the interesting thing is, beyond turning them into wage laborers, all these mining families are dealing with huge amounts of debt due to the easy bank loans provided by the private banks. So this was the main focus of my research. And in this setting, I was trying to understand the convergence between financial inclusion policies and the extractive economies.
Wow. And it sounds like actually this place is traditionally quite prosperous. As I said, people probably have quite a secure livelihood because of agriculture. And now it seems it's their fortune to suddenly you have this mining boom and infrastructure investment. Why are they in debt?
The thing is, both of these economies, they have been dependent on state policies, the broader state policies. So during the agricultural production time, most of the people, the small-scale farmers, they were busy with tobacco cultivation, and it was a state-supported business. There were support purchases, minimum price agreements secured by the state. So my research took place in the aftermath of this long-term agricultural transformation. And when the debt economy started, it was the first time they started to get monthly wages. And these wages are documented wages, which enabled their access to easy bank loans. And there was a convergence also in a different sense because the Turkish state, Turkey experienced a serious economic crisis, a financial crisis in 2001. And it meant the change of both of these policies, both energy extraction policies and also the state-supported agricultural production policy. It was meant the end of this long-term protective agricultural policy. And these people are left with mining jobs since the 2000s. But the key point here is their wages are stable and secure wages. So the banking industry was so willing to offer these small bank loans to these working class people. And it goes almost without saying, we are talking about a group of people who are not financially literate enough. So in most cases, they didn't even check the interest rates or the other requirements of taking a loan. So these are kind of predatory credits. And it is how the cycle of indebtedness started in the region.
Okay. So just to clarify, so in the time when these people enjoyed kind of state-protected agriculture development, these people are quite self-sufficient, even though, state policy was very important, but they were not indebted. Is that correct? So the indebtedness is quite new for them.
This is such a great question because, that was my assumption too when I started my research. But apparently when they were doing this agricultural production business, they still had access to some kind of mechanisms to get credit, mostly through the local stores. They were postponing their payments to the harvest time. They are purchasing all their needs from specific stores, and they can pay when they get their money through agricultural production. This basically means the harvest time. So there was an established indebtedness mechanism even then. So, but this credits, in a sense, replaced this kind of indebtedness habit with this easy credits. And I have to also mention that we are talking about really easy credits, not in terms of only in terms of its predatory nature, but also about the procedures, especially in 2010s. These credits, the banks started to provide them through banking apps. So you just need to fill out a credit application on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. Then you can easily access the credit. So this is an entirely different credit economy, because in the case of local stores, you only have access to limited products. And you are buying your needs, but this is in a sense giving you unlimited opportunity to spend this money for whatever you want.
Okay, that's very interesting. So just to get it clear, the difference in the two forms of credit, right? I mean, in older days, is the credit takes the form of delayed payment when you purchase some necessities, and which is based on mutual the interpersonal relations, because they know each other, and also is based a shared prediction of the period when the debt will be returned, because it's tied to the agricultural seasonal production cycles. But now, number one is not tied to any goods, is not a form of delayed payment, but it is a cash handout beforehand. Number two is not the relation, the creditor is not the local shop, but it is formal banks and large financial institutions. And the number three, probably the time period is, we would say, calendar time rather than the agricultural seasonal cycle. And the number four, as you said, it make it very easy. I mean, no need to negotiate. And of course, it's very depersonalized. You don't know who. There's no person behind this app, but just you do it on your mobile phone. Is this a fair characterization of these two forms of credit?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for summarizing.
Okay, good. Then the question is, why do large banks bother giving out all the cash?
This was something that I realized at the end of my research. I mean, they were my interlocutors, my minor friends, they were always mentioning the importance of having a bank account, how it changed their lives. This was something they always implied in our conversations, but I had to see the bigger picture in order to make sense of this. Turkey has a very specific mechanism, a very efficient mechanism in terms of its national financial inclusion policy, which is called Maaş Bankası in Turkish. The translation would be wage bank.
Wage bank.
Yeah. To describe it briefly, if you started to work in a certain mining company in the region, you have to open a bank account from a specific bank. It's an obligation to take your wage. Before it was different. You were paid manually at the end of 2 weeks, because this is also the time that you change shifts in the mining job. But now it's different. You have to go and open a bank account from a certain bank. And this bank has all your information. And beyond this, your monthly wage, it is directly paid to this bank. So they can easily cut the credit installment from your wage account. So this money is really secure. So there is almost no danger to offer a loan to a wage customer, because you know that you can easily get a repayment. So this system is so secure for them. And especially in the case of offering this kind of easy loans to your wage customers in such an exploitative sector like mining, you knew that this customer won't resist against high operation costs, high insurance costs. You have to purchase insurance in order to access these loans. So this is such a profitable business for the national banks, national private banks.
Wow, that makes sense. So basically, the banks turn all these wage laborers into their customers, and by holding their wage as a security, actually, basically. And then, but nevertheless, the loans were, handed out so easily, and it sounds like the banks are quite confident that the customers will not take too much amount of loan, which is much higher than the wage, and run away or simply declare to the unable to repay.
I think the most important factor, it is not something material, it is not something that concrete, but the most important factor that made these banks so confident about repayment process is almost all of this money are spent for family expenses. So you need to have a running credit bicycle all the times, because you will have other expenses for your family. And if you have a failed credit, then you will be kicked out from this credit market at least for 5 years. So yes, there are this all formal obligations, this formal structure of wage bank, but there are also all these informal responsibilities that make you pay your debt in a timely manner, so that you would have access to other forms of credit. You can still use your credit card. So there is also this intimate aspect in this credit economy.
Okay. So the most important thing actually is the most sure the security for the bank actually is the dependency in a way, the dependency that they cultivated.
Exactly.
On the customer's part, dependent on the bank. Now, then let's shift our lens to the customers, the mining workers and the families. And why do they apply for so much loan, assuming that their wage is can provide them with a decent life?
This is one of the key findings of my research. When I first started to conduct my research, I always assumed that this is just an alluring mechanism, so they are driven into this credit market without even acknowledging the amount of debt they are accumulating. But then I realized that this kind of loans, this formal credits, they have a different function in Soma's highly exploitative economy. They are doing this very dangerous job. They are going underground every day. And in such a setting, it's unsurprising to see many different kinds of temptations that you can use your monthly wage. It is so easy to get addicted to alcohol because you have only limited time to spend your leisure time. And you are feeling tired, your entire life is mining. So for most of the families of young miners and young miners themselves, they also see this credit economy in a protective and a protective lens. If you are indebted with these loans, if you are using this money for some kind of self-developmental needs or for establishing a family, then it will endow you with moral immunity in a different sense. It will make you immune to other spending demands or other kind of spending temptations that are highly popular among the mining community. That was the most interesting part because, yes, we can easily assume that credit has this controlling feature, but I wasn't aware that it can also become a tool for regulating intimate relationships, intimate demands.
Wow, that's fascinating. We'll come back at this point later, but one a small side step. But can you tell us how do they make use of the credit? Because it's very interesting. You say they take the credit somehow in order to prevent them from spending money for things that they think they actually want to do. But now what do they spend money for?
They spend this money mostly for ordinary expenses.
Okay.
Especially in the case of if you are planning to marry someone from the region, there are certain demands that you can expect. For example, kind of new furniture, white goods, like refrigerators, washing machines, dishwashers. So you have all these ordinary expenses in order to make somewhere home. And Soma is full of these white goods stores. So there is also this internal critic of the community. They are accusing each other about having this need to renew their furniture or
kind of
white
conspicuous
goods.
consumption and
Exactly.
creating pressure for each other.
Yeah. But most of the miners, especially the young ones, the second generation ones, they first start to take these credits in order to realize their marriage. And in order to meet all kind of needs during a marriage process.
Yeah. And then a superficial understanding of the data may suggest, they take a credit because of pressure of consumerism. And they have this middle class life image. And I think that is there too. But you decided to put your analytical emphasis on what you call the moral immunity, basically is the disciplinary mechanism, or in a way, the self-disciplinary mechanisms of taking loan. Why is it so? And why you think actually the disciplinary effect is more important than the consumerism desire?
I think the immunity perspective, it offers something beyond being a disciplinary mechanism. But I will first start with this disciplinary functioning of indebtedness. First of all, I think I have to differentiate how debt is understood in Turkish culture. It is not something that is entirely binding or bad or having all these negative connotations.
Like alcoholism and
no, indebtedness.
Indebtedness.
Indebtedness can be something productive because it will give you the moral motivation to continue to invest in your life in a moral way. We have a saying. It says. That is the whip of a young man. Borç yiğidin kamçısıdır in Turkish.
A young man, yeah.
Young and proud man, actually. The exact translation would be like that because yiğit is a very specific description of a young man. Anyway, so it always has this productive function in social relationships, and especially given that it's in the saying, it directly implies the morality of young men. It also says something about both the culture of familial citizenship in Turkey and the patriarchal structure in working class families. Because even the miners themselves think that they can easily spend their money for useless things, just for joy, having some good moments with their friends during their leisure time. So I heard several times from several different interlocutors that it is a kind of concrete and immanent mechanism that could protect them from their spending habits. This is a different kind of disciplinary function because I guess they are also attaching a kind of moral productivity into a debt relationship. It is not discipline in the strict sense, in the westernized sense. It is more like an internal regulation mechanism for them. But what was interesting for me is how it also brought a new form of empathy among the miner community. I mean, it is so easy for them to say no to certain demands from their extended family, their fellow workers, because everybody knew that if you are indebted and if you are indebted for certain kinds of familial needs, then you don't have any money to offer to some other friends, some other...
Or say no to the person who wanted to borrow money from you. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, does that really change their behavior? This moral immunity, and they do become somehow morally purer, and do they become happier?
Actually, no.
Okay.
If you are following the entire life cycle of these loans, yes, in the first process, when you are taking the loan, when you are making your payments regularly, yes, it can give you moral immunity, but still, I have to highlight that we are talking about a predatory market and we are talking about high interest rates. So these credits are also prone to fail in most scenarios. So when you are a defaulted person, when you have a defaulted credit, the moral immunity perspective, it doesn't work in such a scenario. But the interesting part is it provides you with such a mechanism that you can still invest in yourself with each of these new credits, because it could be a new starting point. Yes, you know that this credit can easily fail. You can miss the payments because the interest rates are getting higher and higher, especially in the current day Turkey right now. But what was interesting for me is how it creates a new masculine understanding between the miners themselves. Because you are in such an exploitative scenario of underground mining, we can easily assume that there should be a different solidarity regime among these people. At the end of the day, they are going underground every day together with the same group of miners. But moral immunity, even if it fails in other stages of indebtedness, it still made them establish a new masculine solidarity regime among the miners themselves. That was the interesting part for me. And in the case of marriage payments, with marriage payments, I mean all the expenses that you have to make during the marriage process. Most of them also feel like they are sharing the same fate, because given that everybody knows that they have access to credit, the families, they are not helping their children, their young children anymore in terms of marriage payments. It is not the rule. I mean, there are of course exceptions, but they don't feel that obligated. So they also have this commonality among them. They all know that they now have to carve their ways as an independent man, relying on these credits, successfully using these credits and successfully completing payments. And this is how they build a new understanding of independence and immunity.
Okay. So that's very interesting. Become more dependent on the financial schemes, but become independent from family and from each other.
Exactly.
So therefore, can we assume that the miners actually experience, because this kind of a mutual community seems to become weaker, because everyone's supposed to, if your money, you go to bank, you don't come to friends. And also they have constantly be worried about the interest rate and the repayment, and it's also lots of stress. And is any this part of psychological impact on them compared to, say, 20 years ago in the agricultural economy?
Of course, it's different. I also encountered several miners saying that their entire relationship with underground job, it's changed now. Before, they feel like they can quit every day. But now, if you are an indebted miner, you have installments coming each month, then you have to stay underground and do your job. Even though you are encountering some silly supervisors every day, even though you are not happy about this job anymore. So in a sense, it connects underground and above ground responsibilities in a different way. Indebtedness has this function of connecting underground and above ground. this is something undeniable. But on the other hand, there is another thing that complements that structure. It is the advantage of early retirement. If you are working as an underground miner, you only have to complete 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will be eligible for retirement.
Pension. Okay.
Pension.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the miners, they get retired in their early 40s. Sometimes I even met miners, retired miners who are only 39, 38. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a structure that always promises you that if you stay underground and do your job properly, if you don't miss any shifts, then you will continue to get to be eligible for these credits. You will have this early retirement, and there is a good life waiting for you.
Sorry, so this is the offer from the bank?
Which
No, you said
the
that
pension part.
Yeah.
The pension is offered by the state.
Okay. So what changed? I didn't get it. So that was always like that, or it is now?
That was no, it wasn't like this. I think it was 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't even mention that the entire structure in Soma started to change after a disastrous accident in 2014. And actually, this is how I decided to study Soma and its credit and mining economy.
Yeah.
There happened a huge mining accident in Soma in May 2014, and it killed 301 miners underground. They were stuck underground. So after this disastrous accident, everyone, I mean, the general public in Turkey, everyone was outrageous and pushing the state to do something different, to improve the conditions in the private mining industry. And this was the solution they came up with. They doubled the wages only for underground miners. And they decreased the years that you need to complete to be eligible for retirement, for pension.
I see. Okay, that is independent of the indebtedness, the pension. But you mentioned that as an additional mechanisms which make workers to continuously work on underground. Is that the why you mentioned pension? Okay, yeah. So they are not directly related to...
Yeah, they are not directly related, but this is how all the miners, even though they have very dangerous working conditions, still in the mechanized mines, this is how they still feel like, I need to complete this 20 years.
I see, I got it. So now, if we think of the common concerns approach, do you think it helps? So did you see any common concerns emerging from your data? Which question you think you can go back, talk to the miners about, and they will feel relevant and interesting?
Well, I don't know what you will say about this, but I will define immunity, the desire to have immunity in all these intimate relationships. It's such a common concern. Because it is not simply avoiding dependency. It is not simply seeking independency in a modern wage labor setting. It is like finding an internally moralized way of regulating various demands in various intimate relationships. Because we can say that after the global neoliberal turn, or after the increasing financialization of household budget, the demands that you encounter in your daily life as a wage laborer, they're increasing. Of course, these are intimate demands coming from your intimate, immediate family. So you are feeling obligated.
Demand for raising the living standard, the material
living
standard.
For material demands for buying something, or a child's demand for better equipment, for going to school. It could be anything. But what I'm trying to say is the cost of social reproduction. it is mostly on the shoulders of the working class now, and it's an intensifying situation. So you are feeling obligated to devise new ways to meet all these demands or to regulate these demands.
Yes. So that's very interesting. Then basically you are saying that the cost of living is increasing disproportionately to their incomes. And then these working class families, I understand that you also look at the women, but so far our analytical focus in men, and they somehow turn this into a moral question. So, but do you think they do it kind of successfully? Meaning, obviously there's a pressure, there's a demand, and they feel sometimes, they have to work hard to try to catch, to meet all these demands. And then, but by turning into a kind of disciplinary moral question, as if, the pressure is not external pressure, but it's becoming, I'm being proud, I have to work hard to meet these demands. Does that, from their point of view, they feel it is okay, or actually they feel nevertheless the pressure is still there, and furthermore, this kind of moral immunity and also create extra stress, like worried about the failure of repaying debt and etc. So what is because we're thinking common concern is also something troubles them, and which they want to think more, they want to clarify to themselves. What's your assessment of the impacts of such moral immunity on them?
If I understood your question correctly, you are asking me that if moral immunity is further troubling them?
Or makes them happy.
I wouldn't say it makes them happy, but I wouldn't say also it doesn't make them more stressful, because first of all, yes, you are getting indebted. This is the material condition you are into, but you are equalized in a sense with all other minors, because in order to have something, in order to meet an important demand in your nuclear family, you are getting indebted. So I think every indebted minor feels this sense of being equal to others. So, it is not something that you carve. It is something that you are given almost in a third-person perspective. What I am trying to say is, I can also conceive myself as an indebted minor, as my fellow worker, as my minor brother, or as my, I don't know, the ones that I share the same shift. So it is this equalizing force they are investing into. That is why I was trying to say it is not simply a disciplinary, self-disciplinary mechanism, because they see that there is something solidaristic in this kind of investment into the debt. It is a new class condition among them. Maybe it's a kind of ambitious phrase, but it is a new class condition they share with each other. Can we still call it solidaristic? I don't know. This is an important question, but I can easily say that this is a structure of feeling that is full of empathy. That is why I mentioned this third-person perspective, because I understand you as an indebted minor. I understand that you have nothing to offer to me, but we are still sharing the same fate here. We are still having some kind of resentment against our extended families in terms of being left alone in order to meet these demands of our newly established nuclear families. So, but what we are seeing here is moral immunity is not troubling them, but it is giving them a kind of unexpected sense of empathy. and a new understanding towards each other. And I think it's an important part of the current mining industry in Soma.
That is extremely interesting, Ferda, because I'm thinking this raises a question about the difference between solidarity and the sameness. Basically, here the sameness is enhanced. I can understand you easily because we are in the same material condition. But compared to the old days, there is no intimate and direct bond. They're kind of sticky, sometimes messy relations and give and take and etc. So then, suddenly I feel the moral immunity may have another meaning here. It's not only being immune to this kind of morally dubious consumption behavior, but it is also immune to moral bond. So now I don't need to be too morally responsible for you.
Yeah.
I feel for you, but I don't do more than feeling the same for you.
Yeah.
So therefore, this is very nicely, you put it as a third eye perspective, third person perspective. It's a form of abstraction. Now it comes to the question. So I think this is probably quite a widely shared sentiment. You can say is a new form of class consciousness or group consciousness, which is a consciousness that regard each other belonging to the same category, same group of people, and everyone is the same, but without a concrete, direct, interpersonal connections. And then I don't know where you have a material to, you go to the community, but you still use the word empathy. But of course, empathy still have a different shade of empathy. No? The empathy is something, okay, I'm really care for you. I can step in whenever you have problem and etc. Empathy can also be, normally we will regard as so-called typical middle-class empathy, is that I constantly just feel for you in distance. But I'm not going to do and get my hand dirty. I'm busy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm busy with my own things. You understand that. And so also, being nice about privacy and etc. But it seems that they are moving to that direction. But when you are there, do you feel the community is still kind of quite a warm, caring community? Or it's a community just become really a collection of, go back to Marx metaphor, is a lot of potatoes in a bag?
I could still say that, of course, they are warm. I mean, especially if you are sharing some time with women there. They are all inviting you. They want to feed you, these kind of things. Of course, they didn't change, but everybody knows that their budgets are now separate. It is true that it is even true in 2 generations, minor families. You have a minor father who went through all the same troubles, who knew underground, who even encouraged you to take a job at the mines. And he also now knows that he can encourage you to use this credit instead of giving you some kind of informal loans. And they are encouraging you to do this not because they are selfish, not because they don't want to share their means with you, but it is the normal thing in the region right now. Yeah. It is a shared fate. And they are also seeing it as a kind of opportunity that they didn't have before. So, yes, the relationships are definitely changing. They are conceiving their budgets separately as nuclear families, and the unit of that, in this sense, it's becoming the nuclear family itself. But other kind of solidaristic mechanisms, like sharing the products of limited agriculture production in the region.
Some of them still engaged in agriculture.
Because there is olive fields in the region.
You said the women normally are very heavily engaged.
So this kind of sharing mechanisms, this kind of solidaristic practices within extended families. Yes, they are still there, but in the case of indebtedness, in the case of needing a loan, no, you have to go to bank. And this is the usual thing, usual procedure for everyone, almost everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the story from a very substantive sharing to now a sentimental sharing, I think it is a very telling story of the time that we're experiencing. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ferda.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And see you next time.
Common Concerns Podcast.